presents The Author's Corner with your host, author Kimberly McLemore, as she welcomes her guests into the studio to discuss excerpts of their book.
All right, good evening, and welcome to Vigilant Broadcasting radio station. I am your host and author, Kimberly McLemore, and thank you for tuning in tonight to my show, The Author's Corner. Tonight we have two amazing guests in store for you. Let me just take a couple of minutes, though, and tell you a little bit about myself and the purpose of this show. I am the author of How to Be a Success by Just Being You, Are You Living or Existing, the Pros and Cons of Balancing Life, and the 2019 ILA Award Author of the Year for Social Awareness for my book, Memoir, Deception of the Heart, A Real Look into Domestic Violence. I am also the CEO of the Women's Small Business Initiative, LLC, and the host of the podcast, Your Resource for Success on iHeartRadio, the founder of Author Kimberly McLemore, LLC, co-owner of Talk Radio and TV Network, LLP, and the owner of Vigilant Broadcasting. The purpose of this show is to provide a platform for our new and existing authors, giving them the opportunity, of course, to promote their books, talk about any special events or speaking engagements they may have, and, of course, allowing them to tell us why they wrote the books. So let me just jump right into introducing to you my very first special guest author. Her name is Angela Kaufman, author of Queen Up, Reclaim Your Crown When Life Knocks You Down. Angela is a certified intuitive consultant, licensed clinical social worker, and intuitive empowerment coach. She is passionate about blending the mystical and mundane to help seekers at the crossroads redefine themselves and create fulfilling lives. She is author of Queen Up, Reclaim Your Crown When Life Knocks You Down. Angela has co-authored 3 of Wicca, What's the Real Deal, Breaking Through the Misconceptions, Sacred Objects, Sacred Space, Everyday Tools for the Modern-Day Witch, and the Esoteric Dream Book, Mastering the Magical Symbolism of Subconscious Mind. She also writes spiritually inspired social commentary and is an activist for the rights of humans and other animals. So without further ado, please help me welcome to my platform my special guest, Angela Kaufman. Hey, Angela, how are you?
Hi, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on your show.
Oh, you're quite welcome. I'm excited. We've already been chit-chatting even before the show started, so I'm really, really looking forward to getting to know you more and know more about your books. But before we get started, why don't you just tell the listeners a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. So thank you for that introduction. So I have a couple of different paths that converge together, one being a career in social work, the other being a lifelong interest in spirituality. So my perspective has always been to look at going deeper than the surface level meaning of things, and just making situations, even crises and challenging situations, more meaningful. At the same time, trying to understand like the bigger social issues, what's going on, why are certain things happening, and looking at both the intuitive, spiritual, metaphysical side of things, but also the mundane. How is this situation affecting people in their lives? And so that's what led to me writing Queen Up, and even the books that you mentioned that I had co-authored with 2 other women in the past. Our perspectives were very similar in that we didn't just want to write spiritual books that are great in theory but have no practical use. Like, you read it and it sounds good, but you don't know what to do with it. So we were always looking at, like, how can we make these concepts user-friendly to the average person if you haven't, had the opportunity to study some of these things in depth.
Okay. All right. But so you said that earlier on, we were explaining that you're definitely a licensed clinical social worker. So you take what you have learned through the understanding of tarot and the queens and so forth, which we'll jump into a little more here in a bit, but you utilize that to, like I said, to understand what was really truly going on with the individual. Is that what you do as part of your clinical side as well?
Oh, that's a really good question. So I keep my license, but I'm doing less of the direct care social work these days. I actually transitioned out of the full-time focus on working with clients. I did a lot of work in mental health and outpatient addictions, and luckily in the addictions recovery field, there's a lot more acceptance of spiritual-based counseling because it sort of mirrors like the 12-step model, which is very spiritually, not necessarily religious, but spiritually open. So at the time, I would work with archetypes. But when I started to work on Queen Up and specifically using tarot and the queens, the places I worked were open-minded, but they weren't quite that open-minded. But what led me to write Queen Up specifically was a major transition that I went through as a result of being hit by a car as a pedestrian. And the recovery process from that experience took me out of the full-time social work world and into more of like a coaching. I was still doing like tarot readings as a side business and more like coaching, self-employment. But I definitely, if anything, it was more that I brought the training from the social work field into my work with coaching clients and into writing the book, because it gave me a good baseline to understand the very complicated things that go on when somebody's going through a trauma or a crisis. I mean, it's one thing to just say to someone like, oh, look at the bright side, think happy thoughts and all of this, but if you don't really understand the deeper issues and the deeper conflicts going on, sometimes that can actually be more damaging because you're kind of brushing somebody's experience under the rug.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. And I just heard you say that you were actually hit as a pedestrian by a car, and it's ironic that you even said that, because I had that same incident happen to me many years ago in my late 20s. I was actually physically hit by a car, and I was 20 feet over the crosswalk and found myself the hood of a car and on the ground. But it's all these years, you still sometimes have that trauma, and the trauma is not so much that I can't function and, knowing that I'm not here, but the trauma is still within the body. And so a lot of times people don't understand that when you've had something so traumatic happen to you physically, that doesn't always just go, it never really goes away, but you still have to find ways to function. So a person in your situation, a person in my situation, how do you spiritually help a woman like me or someone like yourself who's been through that, go through that process? Because we still constantly deal with pain. We still constantly have those reminders, even though we're capable of getting up every day and functioning. How would you give someone like me, guidance on how to deal with some of those pains that I still constantly deal with on a day-to-day basis?
Right, and there's so many different arenas of life that are affected. I mean, there's physical pain, which there's all different kinds of like healing modalities or energy healing that that I would encourage, even if it's something that's outside of my specific wheelhouse. I would always encourage someone to look at like what are all the different avenues available. What I tend to focus on is how one's sense of self is affected by that kind of experience. And one of the big lessons that I came away from this experience with was that it really challenged my sense of identity, because I did have to eventually step away from the career. One of the major injuries that I was left with from this accident is a mild brain injury, which has improved a great deal. Like, I wouldn't be traveling all over the country if I was in the same place I was a couple of years ago, in terms of just being able to remember things and get through the day and energy level and all of those things. But it really took a big toll on me in terms of my sense of identity and self-esteem, because, I write about this in the book. I had always gotten a lot of pride and recognition from things like doing really well in school and being hardworking and having a career. And when we look at things spiritually and energetically and emotionally, these titles, these name tags that we give ourselves, that we pride ourselves on, there's an emotional weight to those things. There's an energetic presence to those masks that we wear. And I don't mean masks just in a negative way, like we're hiding something, but the masks that are like the different ways we identify ourselves. That's a physical, real part of who we are. And when we go through a traumatic experience or an injury, or someone becomes disabled, when we suddenly have a change in our ability to function, if someone has ever had the experience of like being down with the flu and it knocks you out for a couple of weeks or a month, and you know how debilitating and you know how disruptive that is, like imagine that same process happening over the course of years, and you can imagine, you can understand how life-changing that is. So I work with people from the standpoint of first making meaning and coming to some kind of understanding of like the bigger picture of what's happening here. And second, how we can still draw on our different strengths, our different aspects of who we are. One of the things that I look at with the queens in particular is that there are 4 tarot queens that represent 4 different aspects of who we are. And when a major life change causes one queen to kind of go in the timeout chair, or one queen to be not so effective as, as being in the lead anymore, we have 3 other archetypal energies to draw on, but we're not always taught that, and we're not always taught how. But I also think it's important when we work with clients around these issues, it's really important that we guide them to come to some of this understanding for themselves, because there's an entirely different feel. If I were to just say to you, wow, Kimberly, you had this traumatic experience, but hey, look on the bright side, because of this, you were able to do blah, blah, blah. And that's kind of condescending. It's, it might not mean to be, but it's patronizing, like I'm giving you the meaning that you should take from that, or I'm giving the client the meaning they should take from that, and that's not for me to do. That's not empowering them. And instead, I'd rather work with them to look at the experience through different lenses, and come to like a bigger picture understanding. But they have to come to that understanding. It's not fair for me to assign it to them. That's taking their power away even more.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, and I like what you just said about the fact that a lot of people don't understand when you go through something dramatic, you don't want to be patronized, because you already know that at that point things are different for you. Right. Me walking every day, it's still different. It's never the same, because being hit the way I was hit, my whole left leg has a continual limp. You have continual problems. You have the arthritis, all the things that I remember that I could do so easily before. I've never been able to do that as much the same anymore. So, it's the constant thought process over and over, even though, like I said, you can still get up and do your normal, I try to go through my normal day without having to feel that pain or think about it, but it's still physically. But I think when you're talking about the spiritual side and really thinking about the different energies within yourself, I think the biggest part that always bothered me about that situation, not so much that I'm not a priest, that I'm able to walk, but I think the biggest part that always hit me the hardest is the fact that the woman never wanted to apologize for what she did. And till this day, I've never gotten an apology. Now, I'm in my 50s, and that happened to me in my late 20s. So, it's one of those things that you carry with you consistently. So when you're talking about those emotions and those energies that you're constantly trying to use the strength to get through on a day-to-day basis, I truly understand and can, understand what you had even went through, the fact of being dramatically, hit and then having this brain injury, even though there are 2 different types of injuries. But a lot of people who've never been through that would not understand that how traumatic something like that can be, even though you can still be just as traumatic on other things, whether we're talking about abuse of some sort, that's a traumatic scenario. If you're going through breast cancer, that's a traumatic scenario. So I like the fact that how you have been able to teach ways to realign your energies and trying to teach others how to do the same thing. I think it's amazing.
Oh, thank you. And, as I hear you describe the lack of closure or how it is disrupted to your healing process to not have this person acknowledge their wrongdoing and even apologize, it makes me think of when we look at the 4 queens, each one represents, like I said, a different type of energy, but we could also look at them as being a different aspect of our personalities, but also like a different area of life. And one of the queens, the Queen of Swords, is kind of like the warrior justice queen. And, this whole idea of justice, I think when we go through a traumatic event like this, it really challenges some of our sense of security, because we're taught, like, hey, if you do good things will happen to you, and if you do bad things will happen, or if someone else does something bad, we're always led to believe that, like, the scales will be balanced and there'll be a happy ending at the end of the episode. And I do believe those things occur, but they may occur over lifetimes. It may take an entire lifetime or several lifetimes for those scales to balance out, and it's very difficult. I feel like there's even a grieving process that goes along with that change in one's understanding of justice. But that's also where there's a queen for that. There's an archetype for that. When we look at our archetypes of powerful women, whether it's a goddess or a mythological woman, or someone that you just look up to in your life as a strong woman, or the Queen of Swords as the warrior archetype, we can work with them to understand justice in a different way and to understand that there are ways for us to find our power, even in these situations where we're looking around for the mundane justice system or these other like conventional ideas of justice to work, and sometimes they just don't work. It doesn't, the wrongs don't get righted the way that we feel they should. But there's a different order to things as well, and sometimes it's healing to kind of try to tap into that different order of understanding that there is justice at work, whether I see it physically in my lifetime or not.
Right. And I agree with you. And I think a lot of times when people hear these stories, they think most of the justice is about, well, did you get paid?
Right.
Right. Okay, well, what does that got to do? All I could think about, and I'm sure you thought that, is that my life is changed. Mm-hmm. It's never really truly be the same, even though you constantly, like I said, continue to go on day in and day out trying to make it as the best of you can. But like you said, closure, I think it was the biggest thing for me. And even though I never got that from it, it's always been that same condescending attitude. Like I said, well, you went to court and you got paid. Well, it wasn't that that simple, So,
right.
At the end of the day, but I just, like I said, I love the fact that how you have learned to take your own incident and made it into something much bigger, because you realized that things were absolutely different for you at that point. And like I said, you prided yourself on being a much bigger picture, and that all the things you've done so well. So now that you have stepped away from the complete clinical side and you are obviously into more of doing the spiritual side of it, we're going to talk a little bit more and get into more of the book. But before we do that, I just wanted to let everybody know, if you are just tuning in, you're listening to Vigilant Broadcasting. It's live here on the Author's Corner. I am author Kimberly McLemore, and I have an amazing special author here. Her name is Miss Angela Kaufman, and we are talking about her book, Queen Up, Reclaim Your Crown When Life Knocks You Down. We are having a phenomenal conversation. We are now going to dive into more of this book. I would love for Angela now to talk more about talk to us about the different queens. I know that you've talked a couple of times here about the Queen of Swords. So let's dive into some other things on the books on the powers of inspiration.
Great, definitely, yes. So there are 4 queens, and traditionally in the tarot there's 4 suits similar to playing cards. Each suit has a specific what we call an elemental correspondence, and I try to break this down but also not get too overwhelming with it, a different elemental correspondence, and the elements are air, fire, water, and earth. And just like when we talk about somebody's personality, we talk about someone being a breath of fresh air because they're very creative. So like the inspiring queen is the Queen of Wands, and I read her as corresponding to the element of air. I will put a disclaimer. If some listeners are longtime tarot readers, your correspondences might be a little different because there are different methods. And in some methods, the air element corresponds to the suit of wands. And in other methods, the fire element corresponds to the suit of wands. But I'll explain why I read air as wands. So the Queen of Wands is the power we all have to take an idea and run with it. It's our creative essence, and sometimes people hear that and they think, well, I'm not creative because I don't draw or I don't paint or, whatever. My art teacher gave me an F when I was in 5th grade or whatever. So we don't think we're creative, but we all have the capacity to come up with ideas out of thin air, right? So even just like in our language, when someone's like very idealistic, we might say they have their head in the clouds. It's all describing that kind of personality, that kind of energy. So someone who, like yourself, you are a communicator, you're an author, you're a host of a radio show, you're a messenger. So the Queen of Wands very much fits with a lot of the energy of what you're doing. And this is the energy of inspiration, because before we do anything, we have to have an idea. So the Queen of Wands helps us generate these ideas. But if we just have ideas and then we don't do anything with them, it doesn't really go too far. So the Queen of Swords comes in next, and that's the fire element. So when we go from having all these wonderful creative ideas and brainstorming and then feeling totally overwhelmed because we don't know what to do first, the Queen of Swords comes in, and she's the fire element. She helps us focus. This is the part of yourself that can get like laser sharp and laser focused, and also she's our confidence. I mentioned that she's the warrior queen. She helps us set boundaries. She helps us get rid of distractions. She's the part of ourselves that says, okay, enough daydreaming about this. We're just going to start someplace and dive right in and just start, like, we're going to just do it now. So she helps us take action, and in particular, she helps us to rise up into our own power when we're facing something that might be scary or outside of our comfort zone. So she's like our inner warrior. And then we have the Queen of Cups, which is the water element. And she is our emotional nurturer. She's much softer than the other two queens. She's our inner empath. She helps us heal emotionally. She helps us experience unconditional love and connection to other people. And we also work with her around attraction, love, family, healing, all of those kinds of things. And then last but not least is the Queen of Pentacles, and she's the Earth Queen. So she grounds us to practical matters. She's kind of like our inner business person, who's always like, okay, well, that's all great, but how are we going to, like logistically, how are we going to work this out? Like, how are we going to afford this? How do we make sure that you know, there's enough inventory? Like, she's our practical problem-solving side, and that's the part of ourselves that gets kind of weighted down in the mundane details. So I ideally would like to see people recognize that we can balance among these four energies, but the reality is our personalities are usually geared so that we favor one or two of them and kind of neglect the other two or three. So right. The thing to keep in mind is that we can call on them, we can balance them. Like, my least comfortable energy is probably the Queen of Pentacles Earth energy. It just feels too slow and like oppressive to me, because she's kind of like the slow and steady wins the race kind of energy. And to me that feels kind of suffocating, but you know, I run a business. I need to use that energy sometimes, and when I need it, I know how to tap into it. So under different circumstances, we can call on either of these parts of ourselves to kind of be behind the steering wheel.
Wow. I mean, that's interesting, and the way that you describe it is funny because in our everyday lives, like you said, we actually use all four of these. We just don't call them queens of wands or queens of swords or the Queen of the Cups or the Queen of the Pentacles. So I love how you explain that, because it does teach you that you can balance things, but it does take work. So what do you recommend to a customer or a client or someone that you're talking to and trying to understand how to utilize their queens? And then the other question I have is, how do people really respond when you say that, hey, this is all about a part of understanding the tarot cards?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. Thank you for asking that. So I'll start with the tarot part because it's probably a simpler answer, and then go backwards. It's been interesting. What I find is that it's a little bit more confusing for people than I initially thought it would be, because people see the word tarot in the subtitle, Unleash the Power of Your Inner Tarot Queen. And for some people, that's like an instant draw. But a lot of people are still a little hesitant about tarot as a tool, or they've got very strong preconceived notions about what tarot is and what it isn't. And not everybody realizes that, like, for example, even in my profession, in social work and therapy and counseling, psychologists use tarot archetypes and things like that. So there is that blend. It exists, but it's still hard for that to be accepted in the mainstream. Even these days, it's kind of surprising. Some people are intrigued about that crossover, and a lot of folks who were into tarot specifically get really intrigued by the idea of using the queens as a model for personal transformation, because they're like, oh, that's a way to form a deeper relationship with the cards. So it can help people who are already interested in tarot reading, but even if you have no interest in tarot cards and don't even own tarot cards, the book is still useful. The principles are still useful, and you can still get to know the queens and work with their energies. But it has been a lesson for me in terms of I now try to be careful about how I present the information so that I don't pigeonhole the book into like a very specific category that it doesn't have to just get stuck in. And then you had asked about what are some ways to align with the queen. So this is where one of the things about this book that's a little bit unique is that people can take things on kind of a more mundane self-help level. There's exercises from my practice in social work and that kind of thing, or people can go, as I like to say, go further down the rabbit hole if they want to. Now, on a surface level, we can look at the 4 queens almost like a personality quiz, right? Like, so how do you bring out these traits that you have? Like, here's some exercises in the book. Here's some journaling activities. There's even some meditations to help you call out that side of yourself if you're strictly looking at it as a matter of 4 aspects of my personality. If you're looking at it more from a spiritual, energetic standpoint, we go further down the rabbit hole. There are things we can do that some folks will just have to take my word on this and read the book to get the full explanation, because it will probably take too long to explain. But looking at it as everything being energy and energy being connected, there are things we can do that are as simple as the colors we wear, the locations we put ourselves in, ritualistic type of things that we can do that help us connect with the different queens or with the different elements that they represent. So without going into all of that, it sounds a little strange to say things like wear the color blue to connect with the Queen of Cups. But if we understand that everything is energy and energy connects, then we can understand that the color blue corresponds to the element of water, corresponds to the Queen of Cups, corresponds to all these traits that she's associated with. Or taking a ritual bath, because then you're, literally immersing yourself in water. So there's a couple of different levels that people can go into in order to bring about these shifts in energy.
Wow, that's incredible. I'm listening to you, and I'm like going deeper into the thinking process. I'm like, oh, we're running out of time. I'm like, no. Worst part about it, but no, it's very interesting because we all talk about spirituality, and you talk about the other pieces of our energies. We've heard these words over and over and over. You don't even have to, like you said, understand what it means about tarot cards or any of that. It's
right.
Of who we are. Is just truly understanding what that practice is, what it means to better yourself, and like I said, align yourself in the right way. And I think if people would take away the gobbly-gobbliness of it,
right.
that's usually how people first think of it. They would truly understand that it is all a part of our divine being of human beings. So with that said, though, I mean, this has been a phenomenal opportunity to talk with you about your book, and obviously we'd love to dive more into this. I'll definitely have to have you come back on the show so we could talk about some of the other books and dive a little bit deeper in this. But you have been a pleasant and great guest to have on, Angela, this evening. Thank you so much for being with me.
Oh, thank you so much. This has been wonderful. I would definitely love to come back on.
Well, absolutely. 2020 is right around the corner, so be looking out for my email.
Sure.
So, but, again, I really would like to thank you for coming on. Do you have any last words that you would like to share? And please also share your information with the listeners so that they can find you and reach out and get a copy of your book.
Oh, definitely. So the book is available most everywhere books are sold, but you can also check out my website, intuitiveangela.com, and that's all one word, and my email is intuitiveangela@gmail.com. And for anyone who's listening who might be going through a challenging time right now, there's a saying in my experience working in recovery circles. They say, don't quit before the miracle happens. And you may be very pleasantly surprised as the wheel continues to turn and we end up in 2020 at some of the wonderful things that come your way.
All right. That sounds good. Everybody that needs to listen. You've just heard it from this amazing author, Angela Kaufman, author of Queen Up, Reclaim Your Crown When Life Knocks You Down. Again, thank you for coming on the show with me this evening. And right now, we're going to take a quick commercial break and bring on our next guest in a few minutes. Thank you.
Welcome back to the Author's Corner with your host, author Kimberly McLemore.
All right. Hello, listeners, and welcome back to the Author's Corner. I am your host, author Kimberly McLemore. Now let me introduce to you our next special guest author, Cassandra Dyer, author of Success with the Wrong Queen. Cassandra is a 24-year-old author from England. She has been writing since a very young age and began to take it seriously once her father inspired her to publish her work, so she did. Cassandra published her first novel in 2017 called Success with the Wrong Queen. It is the first book of a three-part series called Love and Success. She also has the two other books, which is Success with the Right Queen and then Success with My Wife to Be. So, without further ado, help me welcome to my platform, Cassandra Dyer. Hello, Cassandra. Hello. I guess we're still waiting for our guest to come on. So we'll give her a couple more seconds, and before she comes on, we'll go ahead and talk a little bit more about the show itself and what we got coming up while we're waiting for our guest to chime on in. But what we'll talk about next, and before our guest comes on, what we do have going on is that the new ebook, Are You Living or Existing? The Pros and Cons of Balancing Life, is still available on Amazon. And remember, it's the new ebook, and it's available at $3.99 until the end of the year. So still, if you're interested in learning more about that book and wondering if you are truly living at your best life, this would be the book for you to go ahead and pick up. Right, it's still at the price of $3.99 as an ebook on Amazon. And also, if you want to be a guest on my show, if you're interested in being a sponsored guest, you just need to contact me through my email at KimberlyMMcLemore@gmail.com. Please make sure that you provide a short bio, a book cover, and a professional pic so that we can get you all scheduled for 2020. And so do we have Miss Cassandra Dyer on?
Hi, yes, I'm through. Finally through.
All right. Look, I was filling some airtime for you. How you doing, lady?
Thank you. Sorry, I was just stressing trying to make sure I get through to you.
It's okay. I know that you're calling from overseas. It's okay. We got you on. I'm glad that you're here because I'm so excited about wanting to talk about you and the books that you have. So, Cassandra, why don't you tell the guests a little bit about yourself?
Okay. So my name is Cassandra Dyer. I'm a 24-year-old self-published author, and I am from England. Currently, I do have a book series out, which we'll be speaking about. Part 1, which is Success with the Wrong Queen. Then Part 2 is Success with the Right Queen, and the finale is called Success with My Wife to Be. Yeah, and currently I'm working on a novel that's set in London. It was meant to be released a few weeks ago, so it's been pushed back, but that's what I'm working on at the moment as well.
Wow. Well, it is a pleasure to talk to you all the way from England. Oh, you have a beautiful accent, and I'm excited about it. And I see you just had a birthday. Just, what was it, earlier this week? Last week?
Yeah, last week, the 5th of October. I'm really bad.
Oh, wow. Look at you. How does it feel to be 24?
I still feel like a kid, that's the thing. I'm still trying to get used to this adult life.
Ooh, honey, I'm so far beyond that. I can't even remember 24 anymore.
Well, you look really young.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. Enjoy it, and I hope you had a great birthday. It looks like you were having some fun. So, I'm going to talk to you just a little bit more about, you're very young, so what made you, inspire you to start writing books?
Okay, I had quite strict parents, so I wasn't really allowed to be out with my friends, like playing outside of the house, going to the park or anything like that. So I kind of took to writing stories from a really young age. I can't remember exactly what age I started from, but I'd write little novels, do little picture books. I'd even draw little baby rooms. Yeah, I was just more creative because I didn't really have the freedom to be like other kids.
Okay. And so when you say the freedom, does that mean, your parents were pretty strict and that they had other desires, and is that how you really kind of got into doing these things, writing and picture books and so forth?
Yeah, they're quite strict. Obviously, like all parents, they want the best for you. They just didn't want you mingling with the wrong crowds and stuff. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
so I found other ways to...
Say that again?
Oh, sorry. I found like other ways to use up my time and I guess be creative as well.
Mm-hmm. Actually, and you're right, and actually that's a good thing because look at where you're at now. Now, as an author, are you doing being an author on a full-time basis, or are you in school? Are you doing other things?
So I graduated last year. I'm now self-employed, and I'm just a full-time author, I guess, if you could say that.
Yeah. Well, that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. So, do you have showings, and are you been doing book signings and so forth? And you've got the 3 books out, and you've got the 4th one coming. So, are you actually connected with a publishing company, or do you self-publish all your books?
I self-publish all my books, but I try to attend local events. Just get the word out as much as I can. I even go to shops and I'm like, hey, I've got a book, and they're quite supportive as well, especially because I'm local, which is great. But I would say my biggest support has been from overseas, the US. I would say 80 to 90% sales has been from the US.
Oh, awesome. That's awesome. So
yeah.
You are a star over here. That's great, and congratulations on that. That's huge, So one day you'll be able to come over here to the U.S. and do an amazing book signing because you have a series of books. So let's dive into the books. Talk to us a little bit about what's the Success with the Wrong Queen. What is that about?
Okay, so it started from a dream, and then from the dream, my dad inspired me. He knew that I wrote for ages. But then he was like, "You're quite good at this, or maybe you should just at least give it a try." So I did take his advice, and that's how my writing journey started. But Success with the Wrong Queen, it follows the life of a successful businessman who didn't start off his life with the best start, I guess you could say. But he didn't let that affect him, and he worked really hard to make something of himself. Mm-hmm. So he's got the great lifestyle that he never had as a child, and luckily he's also got a beautiful trophy fiance on his arm, so he's lucky in love and lucky in life as well. But with all that still going on, in the back of his mind, he's got someone in his head from his past, which is so his fiance is called China, and his best friend is called Aisha. So they separated. Friends when they were separated from when they were young, and they kind of just grew up their lives completely forgetting about each other. But I guess he never stopped thinking about her. So it's all about him having his life, then going out to search for her, and then they reunite, and China finds out, and it's all about drama, but also how he portrays himself as a man as well, how he handles all situations. Because luckily he's got great support systems around him as well, so he has to be careful of the decisions he makes in life.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And so also what he does to make himself happy.
Okay, so basically your books are all literature and fiction, so they're based off of a story of characters, right? So So all your characters, are they all going through the same books in the next series of books, or are they new characters within the other 2 books as well?
Yeah, so they continue each from the whole storyline just continues with lots more drama and lots more twists and turns. But it just follows just the life of the 3 main characters, which is China, Aisha, and Trey, which is the love triangle characters.
Okay, so it's like a little love triangle thing going on here, huh?
Yeah.
So basically what it sounds like, and when you're describing of your first book, is that here you have this man who thought he had the right queen but found out he had the wrong queen because he really wants to go back with the previous queen, a friend, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's pretty interesting. And how did you, like you said you dreamed up this, you imagined this, and what was that dream like in order for you to really start writing a book like this? Because that's pretty deep, you got all these characters, and, and character writing and writing fiction, to me, is harder than writing nonfiction. So what was that dream really like?
Okay, I've always had random dreams ever since I was younger. So the dream actually started from me having a dream about my mom. It's quite random. My mom took me and my sister, because I've got a younger sister, to a marathon, and the guy must have invited her there, and she said, I'm not sure if I'm going to come or not. And then so my mom ends up surprising him, or she just ends up turning up, and then he spots her, runs over to her, and he's like, he says, "You came." That's all I remember out of the film, out of the dream, out of my dream. But from that, my mind, I just woke up and it kept playing in my mind. I was like, what can I do with this? So from that small little piece of a dream, turned into like a book series. But I do get loads of ideas just by doing random things.
Mhm. That's interesting.
Yeah.
It's interesting how you've been able to take something that you dream and then turn it into something so real. A lot of the books, obviously, we know, and there are certain characters. This is a lot of what people, their lives are like this daily. There's the constant drama. There's the triangle of love thing going on. But for you to be able at such a young age take that concept and bring it to reality, I think is amazing. And in school and when you were younger, you said you enjoyed writing and so forth, and you've done it a lot at home. But was that a huge focus for you in school, or you just decided to really focus it more on as you started once you came out of high school and into your college years?
It was just something to do for fun, to kill time when I was younger. But yeah, it's just something I've always enjoyed doing, and that I've always done. Like, I'd probably take a break of a few weeks or so on, but I've always been writing.
Mhm. And how long?
So I feel like that's how I knew it was my calling. Pardon?
Yeah, you're right. You're right. It is your calling. So, when you wrote your first book, how many days or weeks or months did it take for you to write that book?
Oh my gosh, it took a while. Every single book has taken a while.
Well, sometimes when you have a person who's an author and it's their calling, sometimes, we can get our books out extremely fast, and then other times it may take longer, right? And so, with this being your calling, that's the reason why I asked you that question, just because we're all different when it comes to our writing styles and our skill sets, and, when you're so inspired the way you have been inspired to write as something to do, most people can usually put one away, write a book very quickly. So you have the next book. So when did you bring out the success with The Right Queen? So, your character, the gentleman, he finally realized that, hey, I got this wrong one. I got to get rid of this person. So now you got the right one. Talk a little bit about the success with The Right Queen.
Okay, and just to mention as well, I started writing Success with The Right Queen when I was at university. So I started it and stopped it. So it's all been about starting and stopping. But I published Success with The Wrong Queen in 2017, and then I like to write the dates. Well, just a sec. I like to write the dates on all my books.
Okay.
Okay. I'll have to find it. But for now, let's just say that I published this one. I published part 2 and part 3 last year, I think it was.
Okay.
So it
so
has
you
taken me
back
a very long
on those
time.
books. Okay. And that's
yeah.
fine. So what's the fourth book that you have currently? What is you said it's coming out, or it should have already been out?
Yeah, so it's coming out. Unfortunately, because I've been doing this all by myself, it does take way longer than it should. But so the novel I'm working on now, it's called Hidden Behind Their Smile. It follows the lives of 2 men from the same city, they're the same age, from two different backgrounds. So one's like a Caucasian male, and one's I think you say it's African American. So they're both very similar, but their lifestyles are completely different. But the main thing that they have in common is that they're fathers. So it's all about what they'll do for their children, the love that they have for them, and it just follows the life of the stuff that they go through in life and how they handle it.
Mhm. Wow, that one sounds really good. That sounds very interesting. So, okay, we're going to backtrack just a little bit. Before we do so, I'm going to just remind my listeners here that, you're listening to the second half of the show, The Author's Corner. We're live here on Vigilant Broadcasting. I am author Kimberly McLemore. I have this beautiful young lady, Cassandra Dyer, on the phone with me all the way from England on the show. And her book, her first book is Success with the Wrong Queen. So we're focusing on that. But she also has 3 other books and one other one on the way that we have been talking about during the show. So, Cassandra, talk to me a little bit more about the other 2 books, because like I said, we're going to backtrack now. So we talked a little bit about your newest one that's going to be coming out. We've dived into the first one, Love and Success. So how did the character, I'm going to get the name right here. I want to make sure I get the gentleman right, because you have the 3 characters. So you have China, Trey, and Aisha. So is China the good one, or is Aisha the good one? Which one was the drama queen? Which one was the one that Trey really decided that he knew he should have been with?
That's so funny, because my readers they can't decide who's, well, some of them just know who's the one. So basically, he has to decide between Aisha and China. Aisha's the one from his past where they always spoke about his dreams, and she was like, you can do it, and then they lose contact. So Aisha's the one that he rekindled with, and China's the high maintenance, beautiful, out there character. So I guess you could say she's the one that's bad.
Okay.
And then, so in the second one, obviously Aisha comes back into his life, and then it's all about them trying to get one up on each other just to try and win his heart, because they found the perfect man. Trey, I would say, if I could meet Trey, I'd probably marry him myself. Well, he's a great man, and so both of them have found him. He's confused in life. He's confused. He doesn't know which lady to like, to, which queen to take, because he sees characteristics in both of them that he likes. So it's all about them taking up, competing, doing things to just get his attention. And then the finale is about who he actually decides to make his wife. But it covers lots of topics, so it's not just about a love triangle. Covers topics such as adoption, forgiveness, because I've put betrayal inside of the stories as well. And what I wanted to do with the book series is just portray people, especially the 2, Trey, really positively, because I've been blessed to have positive males in my life. So, and most of the books, especially with the urban fiction, they're all great, but most of them are all about, mostly about drug dealers or, just, so I wanted to just flip it around, because I've got positive people in my life that don't sell drugs, but they're also successful in life, so I wanted to portray that out there as well. And Trey actually was inspired by one of my friends, because I love his bond that he has with his mother. I love that, so I had to put that in there. So if anyone does get to read it, his relationship with Claire, their relationship was inspired by my friend.
Wow, and that's amazing, and that's very inspiring. And I love what you just said, that you wanted to write something positive, and you wanted our men to be seen in a positive light, and that's very important. Because you're right, most of the time our men are looked at very negatively, and they're always looking at them as doing something wrong. And even when we characterize them in our own books, they're not always a positive influence. So I love that how Trey is the positive person, and nothing that there's that much wrong with the ladies in as their characters, but they have drama around them, and he's that pinnacle, he's that person to balance them, but yet still at the same time he's trying to figure out, okay, well, which one is going to be my true queen? So now that you have the second book of the series, let's talk just a little bit about the final series, because he has now truly found his wife to be. So who's that wife to be?
Oh, I don't want to say other people's wives. The finale definitely summarizes everything all together. And at the end, there's a beautiful wedding, and then if you see the book covers as well, there's a beautiful dress, and then on top of the mannequin, it shows the 2 faces, so Aisha's and China's, and it's giving you hints saying, who will you choose? You have to read it to know who wins in the end.
The triangle love, we're not going to find out who won at the end. Oh, listeners, that this means one thing, that, you have to get this young woman's amazing series, because because I'm just sitting here like, wow, this is awesome. And then to be able to know that here you're all the way there in England telling us your story, and you have so much more to live for and so much more to write about. So beyond this series of fiction books that you do, have you ever thought about doing nonfiction books? True stories?
Maybe in the future. I've definitely thought of a horror or thriller. And that's been half written. Like, I've got like a whole pile of books that haven't been touched since I started them or completed them. So maybe in the future I will publish it, and maybe even like I think it's an autobiography, just like of things that like I've done in my past, or mistakes, things that hopefully no one else will do the same, and it's just to put in a book so people can learn from me and hopefully be inspired as well.
Well, you're already an inspiration, my dear. You have, accomplished more than what most people have at your age, and especially when it comes to being an author. I get the question all the time because I train people how to self-publish their books as well, and I constantly get that question of, well, how do you become an author? And the number one answer I give is, you have to start writing, right? And so taking that first initial step is always the hardest. But once you take that initial step and you realize, like you said, you had a passion, and even though it was like just something to do, that passion has turned into something very viable. And as you continue to write and continue to grow and continue to keep yourself out there, people will see you for who you are and realize that your talents are above and beyond. And, you're doing this as a full-time business for yourself, and you can continue to do that. I definitely encourage you to make sure that you have some book signings, go and continue to talk to people, like you said, to let everybody know that you are that author. Make sure that you definitely advertise, constantly and promote yourself on your social media pages, because you definitely have something special and unique. And to have a series of books like this, I just love it. I mean, and for you to tell the stories and for them to come out the way they're coming out, it's great that you even have the true understanding of what it means to have somebody look up at you and realize that you do have something special and unique. So you congratulate yourself and pat yourself on the back all the time for doing well, being an author. You're absolutely welcome.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, would you say?
Thank you so much. It's really nice
you're
to
welcome.
hear.
It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. I've enjoyed having this opportunity to talk to you. So tell Cassandra, where can we find your books? And tell us about your social media and all that good stuff as well.
Okay, so my books can be found on Amazon. You can either type in Cassandra Dyer or type in Success of the Wrong Queen, and then you can find my books linked to there. I am working on a website at the moment, so for now I don't have a website yet, but I can be found on Instagram and Facebook. My brand's name is Cass is Creative, so it's CASS, and then the word is, so IS, and then creative, all one word. And I do have a reading group as well. You're more than welcome to join, because I will be posting the book cover in there soon. So anyone in my reading group, they see everything first. So if you want to join that, it's, type in Keeping Up with Cass the Author, and that's on Facebook as well, and you'll be accepted straight away, and you'll be welcomed.
Awesome. And that's great to have a reading group, because reading is important, and then always great to get everybody's feedback about, what you've accomplished and what other authors have accomplished as well. And it helps you become even a better and stronger writer, so you are definitely, like I said, doing it. So let me ask you real quickly, how does your family and your friends feel about you being this amazing author, and then here you are doing interviews all the way here in the United States?
Yeah, they're really proud of me. It's still sometimes doesn't feel real. And when they mention it, they're like, oh, she's written a book. I'm like, oh, yeah. Like, it feels like a dream. But, yeah, they're really proud of me.
Well, and like I say, congratulations. And you know what? Dreams always come true, right? Especially when you're doing what you're doing, you're working very hard. So, I say keep patting yourself on the back and keep making things happen. Now, do you have any last words to tell the listeners this evening?
Just that I like to, even with the book that is coming out, Hidden Behind the Smile, that follows the life of the two men, Like, what I'm trying to do, I guess you could say my philosophy is to like write about men in more positive ways, that's all. So that's what I want anyone to take from here. And I also like to write about topics that aren't really spoken about quite a lot. So you'll notice in the book series and in the one that the novel that I'm releasing, there's topics in there that make everyone think. And I hope that it'll make you discuss as well with other people, even if it's not just to promote the book. Just be like, I've read about this topic. What do you think? I like to make people think and just see things differently than what's the norm.
Exactly. And like I said, I love that attitude you have, because you're absolutely right. Writing positive is important, and especially, like I said, about our men. And I'm glad that you can see that that's an important topic to do. And like I said, for everybody, if you don't know who this young lady is, Cassandra Dyer is an author of The Success with the Wrong Queen. She is also the author of Success with the Right Queen. This is a 3-part series, and Success with My Wife to Be. And she's also got a new book that will be coming out soon called Hidden Behind the Smiles. I think it's going to be another amazing book. So please, follow her on Facebook. Pay attention to everything that she's doing. She is doing a wonderful job. And again, I thank you for being a guest on my show this evening, Cassandra. I hope
thank you for having me
on the show in the future.
Yes, definitely. Just let me know. And thank you so much for taking me on.
You're very welcome. And for everyone else, as I was saying earlier, if you would like to be a guest on my show, all you need to do is send me a short bio, book cover, and a professional pic to KimberlyMcLemore@gmail.com to be on the Author's Corner in 2020. So I'm already looking out to the new year, so you need to get on quickly, because this show is done once a month. So if you're interested, please reach out to me. Also follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and you can also follow me on the Women's Home Business Initiative. LC, have a YouTube channel there. And, of course, thank you for tuning in tonight to Vigilant Broadcast. Please stop by, like our Talk Radio and TV Network, LLP, and all our other social media platforms. Join me next month for another amazing show in November. But until then, enjoy the rest of your evening. Good night.
Good night.
On Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and Periscope at Author Kimberly McLemore and at Talk Radio TV Network, LLP.